Follow your cue. We'll follow your cue.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay, dear viewers, we come to the one and only panel discussion over the last 2 days. We've had a lot of speakers coming and speaking to all of you, monologues generally on a one-on-one basis. But we had to bring the industry in front of you, the perspectives from the industry, people who govern the industry, people who make decisions in the industry. So here's a great panel discussion. We have stalwarts in the industry, but before I go on to introduce the stalwarts to you, welcome you all, sir. We are very grateful to have all of you and engaging in one of maritime industry's largest technology conferences, TIM 2021. We've been engaging with the audience. Thousands and thousands of people have been engaging with us over the last 2 days. We've been doing live as much as we will be doing live this one too, and on our YouTube Naval Connection YouTube page as well as the Facebook page. We've had more than 1,500 to 2,000 footfalls over the last 2 days on our virtual channels. Even now, thousands of seafarers and hundreds and thousands of seafarers and students will be watching and hearing stalwarts like you. So this is going to be a very enchanting session, and we've kept a very generic yet so important topic for today's discussion, and embracing digital culture. While in the last 2 days, we've seen some of largest in maritime industries, largest technology service providers coming and speaking to us about technology, we needed to understand the perspectives from the ship management side, from the seafarer's end, from the pitfalls and the disadvantages of technology. So we decided to call the decision makers in the industry to get their views on something as diverse as embracing digital culture. So first of all, I would like to welcome our moderator for today, Captain Shiv Halbe. He doesn't need any introduction to all of you, must be knowing him already, but just a wee bit, a few lines on his expertise. Captain Halbe was born and raised in Kolkata. He's an alumni of T.S. Rajendra, sailed on various kinds of vessels and took up shore assignment with erstwhile Denholm Shipmanagement in Mumbai, rising up to the head of operations in India. Thereafter involved in a few startups, technical management and commercial operations of parcel chemical tankers. Being a second generation seafarer, he is an ardent supporter of all things nautical and has been a supporter of professional bodies, a fellow of the Nautical Institute and a fellow of Company of Master Mariners of India. His present role as is CEO of MASSA, an association of shipping companies, gives him an insight into various challenges faced by the companies and seafarers alike. So Naval Connection and TIM is proud to present and offer you Captain Shiv Halbe. Welcome to TIM 2021.
Thank you. Thank you.
I go on to another expert in our panel, and none other than Captain Sankalp Shukla, also a personality who needs no official introduction. But just for the people who does not know his skills, the versatile skills he holds, Captain Sankalp Shukla joined Bernhard Schulte formerly known as Eurasia, as cadet in 1995. He got command as master in 2007 and shifted ashore in same year in Chennai office. Sankalp then studied and got a degree in international shipping, logistics, supply chain and management and port policies. He joined back PSM as Marine Superintendent in 2009 and was promoted to crew manager in 2010 and further to Deputy Director and Director in 2014. And lastly, he got promoted to Managing Director of Bernhard Schulte. He was elected as Chairman of the Foreign Owners, Representatives and Ship Managers Association, FOSMA, and is the General Secretary of MAPS, Court Member of IMU, Member of NUSI, ITF Trust, and Board of Members of RBSC, and it goes on and on and on. And I have to end here because it will fill up the whole time talking about his accolades. Yeah. So the Naval Connection is very proud to present and offer you Captain Sankalp Shukla as a speaker at the TIM conference. Welcome, Sankalp.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have Nakul Malhotra here, and Vice President Open Innovation Marine Products Wilhelmsen, Singapore. As Vice President Open Innovation, Nakul is deeply engaged in the company's corporate venturing endeavors and is an avid proponent of bridging industry domain expertise with new age technology capabilities. He advocates an open innovation policy philosophy to solve the big maritime challenges by leveraging a deep sense of ecosystem thinking and the ability to collaborate with permeable organizational boundaries through equity and non-equity structures. With an industry involvement over 25 years, Nakul combines a wealth of international maritime commercial operations and management expertise with qualifications in marine engineering, business management, and direct seafaring experience. He is also a strategic advisory board member for a number of maritime startups and mentor for several incubators and accelerators globally in the maritime domain, plus is a fellow of the Institute of Marine Engineering, Science Technology, Royal Institution of Naval Architects, Institute of Marine Engineers, India, Chartered Fellow of the Institute of Logistics and Transport, Associate Fellow of the Nautical Institute, and keen commentator on the maritime innovation and digitization. The Naval Connection is very proud to present and offer you Nakul Malhotra. Nakul, welcome to TIM 2021. I will wait to introduce Mr. Maneesh Pradhan, who we are waiting to join. And if he does, I will speak out his profile once he does. Meanwhile, we also have another very eminent person, huge personality in shipping, global shipping, Captain Bhasin. He's as the chairman of MASSA and the managing director of MSC Crewing Services Private Limited, India, heading India operations towards recruitment, placement, training of seafarers for 170 cargo ships and 18 cruise ships of Mediterranean Shipping Company, MSC. In 2001, after almost 10 years in command of vessel, he opted for show job in manning and training. In 2005, MSC started their own manning offices in India, and Captain Bhasin is founder trustee member. He was actively involved in setting up MSC offices in India and streamlining the procedures, which are now giving fruitful results for all. Apart from heading all MSC offices in India, he's actively involved in various seafaring activities and has presented papers in different maritime seminars in India and abroad. He represents various associations, and to name just a few: Chairman and Director of MASSA, Director of MTRF, Secretary General of CMMI India, member of various committees under Director GG Shipping, Fellow of CMMI, member of Nautical Institute, Executive Member of MAPS. And MSC is a huge company which has risen great heights under his leadership, and the only company in India which has taken continuously on average one yard delivery of 9,000 TEU container vessels every month for the continuously 17 months. The Naval Connection is proud to present Captain Mahendra Bhasin at the TIM conference. Welcome, Captain Mahendra Bhasin, sir. And with that, for the next 1 hour, we would like to, I hand over the forum and the podium to the moderator, Captain Shiv Halbe. And the last 15 to 20 minutes, I would like to dedicate to the audience questions, and we will take the questions and present it later to Captain Shiv Halbe, the moderator. So over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Shaukat. It's always a pleasure to be part of your events. We have had a packed 2 days. A lot of ideas have been floated. A lot of new things have been seen. And we now come to the culmination, which is a subject as huge as the conference itself. The conference is technology in maritime. And this particular session is to discuss embracing digital culture. Quickly, first, let's understand what is culture. From a human angle, culture is ideas, customs, behaviors of a particular people which characterizes them. Yes, it could be also interpreted as stereotyping. Very quickly, we do say when somebody hails from the east of the country or south of the country, we immediately realize how he will behave or act in a particular situation. And that is part of the culture. What is then company culture? It is a growth of or an extension of the human culture, but with goals and attitudes and values which are embraced by all the employees. And this is visible in certain activities that happen. For example, you may find that a company culture is to wear formal clothing 4 days a week, but on the 5th day, informal clothing is permitted. It's nowhere written anywhere, but that's part of the ethos of the company. Or that a company will celebrate birthdays of its employees. I've not seen it any manual. It is written that birthdays will be celebrated. It usually goes under the bracket of employee welfare. But they do celebrate, and then it sort of becomes the company culture to adopt these practices. So what is digital culture then? It is use of technology and the internet to run our day-to-day activities. Have we embraced the digital culture over the past two decades? Yes, by persuasion and by disruption or disincentive, we have done that in our day-to-day lives. Simple mundane things like banking. We hardly visit a bank anymore. We can transfer money, we can withdraw money, we can do all the activities that needed a visit to the bank earlier, sitting in our homes now. In fact, in some of the banks, there is actually a disincentive for visiting the bank. If you want across the desk service, then there is a service charge levied for that. So it does become a disincentive. Have we adopted this because we liked them? First, we resisted. Then we realized the benefit of that. And now we can't do without them. And that is how evolution of a culture actually happens. In the recent times, especially during the pandemic, the digital technology has actually leapfrogged into our lives. We have been forced to embrace this technology. I mean, just look at this conference today. It is, because it has kept our lives and livelihood going. You look at this conference today. If 2 years ago, somebody had told me that I will be attending webinars at least twice a week, I would have told that person, stop watching Star Wars. It's about time you get back to work. But that's a reality now. In fact, many of us cannot believe that we will actually have physical meetings anymore. At least I for sure don't see that happening in the near future. What about the maritime industry? The maritime industry, as an industry, it consists of two basic elements. One is the shore-based establishment, and the other one is the ships. And we must not forget that the ships are our drivers. You can do what you want ashore. The business is ships. That's what the maritime industry is all about. The ports are set up to receive ships. So very seldom do you build ships to meet port requirements. Yes, we know that there is a Suezmax and there is a Panamax, etc. But that is only for transiting a seaway. But the driver being ships, we must understand that whatever technology we need to create or we need to pass on or we need to embrace, wherever ships are involved, there is a certain basic hindrance or there is a certain basic barrier comes in because of the way the communication will happen or can happen. There are certain limitations to that. And whether the ships are our strongest link or weakest link in this entire chain, it depends on whom you ask. It's seldom does the shore office face disruption in communication. We do face here in case of excessive rainfall, maybe when the cables get submerged or something like that. But with ships, it's quite common. Ships move in a seaway, signal drop takes place. There are blank sectors for satellite signals. These do happen. The bandwidth changes. And of course, we cannot forget the certain rules that are in ports, imposed by certain countries and ports, where communication ports are not open all the time. And we must understand that. Today, we have a panel, which is a large segment with
Captain
a wealth
Halbe,
of experience.
I am sorry, I just want to barge in. I'm sorry for interrupting. Just want to barge in. My apologies, I missed out introducing Captain Rajesh Tandon, and one of the most powerful, one of the most powerful entities in shipping. And I would like to take this opportunity to welcome Sir Captain Rajesh Tandon, Director, Industrial Relations, V Group, a former chairman of International Maritime Employees Council, IMEC. Captain Tandon is an alumnus of 1973-75 batch of T.S. Rajendra. He served at sea, initially with the Shipping Corporation of India and then with V Ships, specializing on tankers, VLCCs, and VLOO carriers. Captain Tandon came ashore in 1991 with V Ships and set up the V Ships office in India in 1997 as the MD, and is now serving as Global Director for V Group Limited, handling industrial relations and seafarer development. He has served as chairman of IMEC from 2014 until 2019. He has also been a member of the ship owners delegation to ILO's special tripartite committee for MLC, SID, and minimum wage deliberations at Geneva. He has been a member of the National Shipping Board. He's the founder member of the Nautical Institute of India branch in 1993. He's a trustee of Seafarers Provident Fund organizations, the Maritime Floating Staff Welfare Trust, NUSI ITF Trust for Indian Seafarers. His efforts have been recognized by Indian and international maritime community, and he has been felicitated by several industry bodies and associations globally. Captain Rajesh Tandon was conferred the Varuna Award, the highest personal award in maritime in 2018 for his sustained and outstanding contribution to the maritime sector, not only in India, of course, as I personally know, globally too. In 2021, he was elected and he was elevated to the post of President of V Ships India. The Naval Connection is truly proud to welcome Captain Rajesh Tandon as one of the speakers in the panelists. Welcome, sir. And over to you again, Captain Halbe.
Thank you, Shukla. Thank you. When I started speaking, I thought something was amiss, but I couldn't put a finger to it because I was probably too engrossed in wondering what am I going to say. Or making sure
I wouldn't have dared to talk about Captain Tandon without a paper in front of me because of all the things that he's done. So actually the paper had flown away. So apologies.
Yes, you need to embrace the digital culture. We can see that. Okay, without much ado, let's move on to listening to our esteemed panel, who consist of who's who of the industry. And I think collectively, they have over 100 years of experience in this industry. So let us hear from Nakul Malhotra first. Over to you, Nakul.
Thank you very much, Captain Halbe. Let me just say that I'm really pleased to be in this session. In many regards, it's a homecoming. I used to be in India for a short while, quite a few years ago, and have been I've been abroad since then. So quite excited to be in the session. I'm also going to use slides for primarily the reason that I want to show some imagery and hopefully perhaps supplement and add on to your very good introduction. And also, I guess I have a slightly different perspective, largely because I don't work in the ship management side. I actually work in the marine product side and in the innovation space specifically. So I just want to take the opportunity to maybe put forward a couple of perspectives that may aid the panel discussion. So I'm going to go really quick. Can I just get a quick thumbs up and the fact that you can see the slides? Perfect. So embracing a digital culture and really nice definitions, Captain Halbe. So let me put a slightly different, maybe different angle to this. And, you know, imagine for a second that you're not in the marine industry. Imagine for a second that you're actually outside the marine industry. And we talk about a lot of developments and tremendous sort of changes that have taken place. But to the layman outside the industry, they're still looking at a lot of our operations and are thinking, you know, is it really traditional? And we got to force ourselves. And a big qualifier right now, I'm a futurist and I'm an optimist. And that makes for quite a heady combination when you're in the innovation space. The reality, though, is that the maritime industry is a crucial part of everyday life. And we've seen most recently with the supply chain resilience discussions that have taken place on how critical it is. And at this stage, also want to take the opportunity that I think the governments that are recognizing seafarers and the maritime industry as being a key industry and seafarers being key workers, kudos to them. And I hope that we can get more on board, because it truly is 90% of world trade. And, the number can be 85 or 95, but the point is that the vast majority of world trade goes through there. One of the things that is happening is, whether we take it because of its regulation based or whether it's a drive for further efficiency, the industry is modernizing and is actually looking for technology competence, because that competence doesn't reside in the industry necessarily. One of the big things that are taking place is that the industry is also moving from a pure innovation reacting to regulation stance to actually regulation now having to react to innovation stance. If we think of autonomous vessels going way ahead into the future, but in my own experience as well, with the work we do in 3D printing or the work that we're doing in software as a service or so on and so forth, the regulations are having to keep up. And that's a dramatic shift to the traditional approach of innovation within the industry, which has either been specifically economic or specifically in answer to regulation. So what is going to suddenly change? What's like really special? Well, shipping has tons of data, but it's localized and siloed. Computing power is readily available, and that isn't something that the industry controls. But communication and connectivity is dramatically changing. Now, if you look at this graph, and you mentioned the shore side versus the ship side, absolutely, I agree with that. And a shore side in the non-maritime space, think of what happened in the 1990s and the 2000s, and with the advent of 4G and now 5G. That connectivity, that bandwidth unleashed dramatic capabilities in terms of interaction, video streaming, in terms of computer imaging, in terms of analytics. And that happened ashore. And the biggest issue in shipping largely has been the bandwidth restrictions that is on the ships. What we're seeing now with the launch of several initiatives with the SATCOM companies is that bandwidth is dramatically increasing. The cost of that bandwidth in relative terms is dramatically decreasing. And whilst I make no apology for the fact that we're still sitting, largely speaking, in the 2G, maybe entering 3G space, we are seeing examples of 1 terabyte transfers on ships through some of the initiatives. And there is no other direction but to follow this curve at some point. And please bear in mind what that connectivity unleashes when we think of what it gave us ashore in terms of the platforms and transactions and so on and so forth. And the fact is, we can't do this in isolation. We can't do it alone. There isn't going to be one company that suddenly wins this game, because it's only possible to do through collaboration. And that's my first contention, at least, or proposal, to say that means that there's a really different mindset requirement in terms of collaboration across the industry. It warms my heart when I see panel discussions such as this with so many stakeholders across the industry coming together. And whilst there's a lot of POCs, proof of concepts, minimum viable products, the real trick going forward now is taking some of those ventures, some of those concepts to scale. Mass scale. And that's only going to happen through what I consider to be the open innovation framework. Permeable organizational boundaries, allowing corporates to interact, collaborate with each other, not sort of wrestling with ring fencing and archaic exclusivity clauses that tries to take a winner takes all position. So that, my point is, the first foundation for embracing a digital culture is to truly embrace collaboration across the industry. And I think there's a number of mindsets that need to be addressed, from scarcity to abundance. I mean, building ecosystems is about moving from this environment of scarcity that we have to capture value from all our stakeholders to actually recognizing the abundance of opportunity that is likely to exist going forward. And therefore, the only success is going to be by co-creating value across those stakeholder groups. We shouldn't underestimate the amount of mindset shift that is required to actually take this into practice. The next one is about empowered teams. And I think this speaks to a lot of what we see and face, is that generally speaking, there's a management thesis around people need to be directed and managed. And particularly when you think of innovation teams or project teams, they won't know what to do. There'll be total chaos if they're not managed. And one of the mindset shifts that I believe need to take place, and that has taken place in other industries, is that if you give responsibility and a vision, people will be highly engaged and will actually figure out ingenious solutions and deliver exceptional results. The simple reason is, if we provide too much hierarchical instruction, we essentially limit the capability of solutioning and the ability to innovate. Obviously, that needs to fit within certain contexts, and particularly as far as safety is concerned and other regulatory requirements. The other one is rapid iteration. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because this we all hear about, but the reality is that we are moving away and have to move away. And this is with the utmost respect to all of the most senior and experienced individuals. But the fact is that we're living in an unpredictable, complex, volatile, and ambiguous world. What these technologies can unleash, may unleash, needs to simply be experimented with. And we need to be able to assess and toss what doesn't work, but also then embrace what does make things better. And it has got to be faster, and it's got to be better, and it's got to be smarter. The final one that I want to put forward in terms of a mindset is this technology being an enabler. It's moving away from technology being the domain of the IT department, keeping it away from operations or operational business. Technology now is to be seamlessly integrated. We're getting increasing numbers of digital natives into our organizations, keeping them engaged, acquiring talent, attracting talent, and retaining talent is going to only happen if we can provide an attractive workplace. And part of that is this experimentation, is the fact that many of the younger population within the maritime industry on the weekends work with Amazon and Flipkart and all the online banking and so on and so forth. To expect them to come to work on Monday morning and revert back to, remember the slide on communication, like it's 1995, is a real tough ask. So we've got to question ourselves, how much more can we push ourselves to kind of get into, or allow talent to get into a time machine, come into that time machine and come into shipping and help us bring ourselves forward like other industries have moved forward. Sure, it's nuanced and it's an international industry. I have absolutely no qualms with that. And that represents part of the challenge, but it also represents part of the opportunity. We have a number of digital initiatives. So the next slide I'm going to show, and I'm not going to try to do a plug on our own ventures and products, but through these digital initiatives, we found some really key learning. And the first one that we found was innovation is not invention. And that sounds so simple and so obvious, but it is extremely crucial to build on other things that work and make them better, to share across the industry, to not need to have a patent or brand new capability or technology to do something, is at the foundation of innovation. It's about just making things better, one small bit at a time. I think the other thing that sometimes we fall into the trap with is we experience the Amazons and the Googles and the Flipkarts and whatever else, and we believe that that B2C space success is what has to happen in maritime, and it doesn't. B2B innovation, B2B embracing digital culture is different. We have to define what our own good looks like and try and challenge ourselves to move towards that good. But I think at the core of it, and I'm not going to go every point, but at the core of it, this is only successful if we can provide a scale path for adoption. That's the only way this works. The standardization of digital culture is not going to be a consequence of regulation, in my opinion. I think regulation will contribute, but it'll be a consequence of adoption. What ultimately gets adopted wider in the industry will end up being the standard, a little bit like the USB specifications. At the core of it, it isn't about the technology. At the core of it, ecosystems, the culture, the embrace, the moving forward, The future and my optimism is about the people. Training, preparedness, and competence remain at the foundation of this industry. And so every person plays a part, and hence I advocate. The big problem is when people feel, and again, apologies to that whole skill set, that 3 programmers, 2 data scientists, and a chief digital officer will answer all the problems. No, they won't. They are an important skill set, but they have to be connected. They have to be bridged with core maritime competence. That's what generates most value. That's what enables us to cross our nuanced bridges. And in this process, it isn't just the skill sets, it's the mindsets. It's the proxies of curiosity, problem solving. It's the proxies of empathy that really defines whether seafarers and maritime players of today can navigate this uncertainty, want to try to solve these problems, and partner up with the technologists in their company or other companies to take the steps forward. Ladies and gentlemen, my contention really simply, and my position is adapting to the digital future, embracing a digital culture isn't about the technology. It's about all of us as people. I hope that's given some perspective and perhaps some opening to be able to take the panel discussions further. And I look forward to engaging with the panelists and hopefully some of the audience questions later. Thank you.
Before I hand over again, Captain Halbe was there. I just want to introduce Mr. Maneesh Pradhan, who's joined us, and a little bit on Maneesh. Maneesh is heading the largest crewing operations from India, Anglo Eastern. He has over 26 years of experience in shipping, which includes his 10 years tenure at sea and 16 years ashore. He is a marine engineer and an alumni of Directorate of Marine Engineering and Training, Kolkata. He joined Anglo Eastern Shipmanagement, Hong Kong as junior engineer in March 1994 and worked his way up to the rank of chief engineer in 2001. He went on to join the Anglo Eastern office in 2004 as a fleet personnel manager in Kolkata. And then he moved to Anglo Eastern's Mumbai crewing office in 2011 and was eventually appointed as managing director of crewing operations in India on 1st January 2019. He was also involved with the startup of Anglo Eastern offices in Odessa and Jakarta. With Anglo Eastern handling a total of almost 21,000 seafarers now, working with people is Maneesh's passion and comes from his heart. During the current pandemic, Anglo Eastern was the company to arrange the largest number of crew changes for Indian seafarers, with a count of over 22,000 crew movements done since lockdown until date. Besides his professional occupation, Maneesh Pradhan has started an NGO called Anavi. I don't know, Maneesh, please correct me if I'm pronouncing this right, which was started in 2009 in Kolkata and now operates in 7 cities across India. The NGO is now supported by Anglo Eastern, and the workforce are wives of officers and staff of Anglo Eastern. The Naval Connection proudly presents Mr. Maneesh Pradhan as a speaker in the panel discussion in TIM conference. Captain Halbe, he has requested, he doesn't want a separate time to speak, but he'll be a part of the panel discussion. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Maneesh, for joining.
I'd only say I'm sorry for being late and for not being, as per the process, but that's because I've had a bereavement in my family and I've just reached office I had to go to Calcutta and I've just made it. So I'm really sorry for this. I'm very sorry.
Maneesh, please extend our condolences to your family. These are trying times. We understand that, but thank you for joining nevertheless. Coming back to the program, Nakul, thank you very much for a very pointed presentation, which has opened up a lot of questions and answered a lot of questions as well. So we will come back to you when we do the question and answer part of it. Our next speaker or person on the stage, or screen rather, is Captain Sankalp. So over to you, Sankalp.
Thank you, Captain Halbe. Thank you very much. Thank you, Shaukat and Naval Collections for having me here as a panelist. To start off, I mean, till I think till February last year, I didn't know what Zoom was. I thought the only platform that we could actually virtually meet for a brief period of time is Skype or Microsoft Teams. But I think the entire perception, the entire industry ashore, the industry out at sea has seen a drastic change take place over this period of the pandemic. Now, the shipping industry has always been told that they are very reactive to a digital culture. We are very late by the time technology reaches on board our ship. And we have always been claimed to be called traditional seafarers who like following the traditional ways. Whether we had seafarers who were ashore working in offices, well, that all changed. People got computer savvy, they got technology savvy because it was the need of the hour. But as things slowly start evolving, we are seeing that the shipping industry is being more proactive towards technology rather than reactive. We started a long time back with simulators. Recently, we've seen artificial intelligence entering the maritime training domain. That also comes with with basically bringing into account safety of the seafarers who are going on board ships, who instead of first going through practical training on board ships, which has a safety concern, are able to do it close to practically in an environment of artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and IMO has also started adopting or rather adapting a lot of digital changes on board ships. Of recently, we are seeing inspections, tank inspections, hatch inspections taking place using drones, where earlier they were rafting. There was always a nature of danger for of the surveyor or the respective seafarer's life. So drone inspections are acceptable. We've over the period of COVID, we've had a lot of classification societies carrying out remote surveys rather than actual practical surveys. So yes, shipping is now embracing the digital culture. But what does that mean? That means that our seafarers, our office staff, they all need to be trained in that change in digital culture. What we also need to realize, sorry, I am being very, very skeptical here, that everything has its limitations. Everything needs to be used in a particular way. And we are seeing that there are even hazards when you over-rely on digitalization. We are seeing, whether it be on board ships, whether it be ashore, we are seeing that there is something known as digital fatigue that is coming in. And we need to realize when to stop. We have people who are keeping bridge watches, coming back to their cabins, on WhatsApp, on social media, because today internet is available as I was really nice to see the bandwidths. We are moving into the 3G culture that is coming on board ships. So the bandwidth is available. The cost is not that high, but we need to realize where to put a stop, because we've had multiple cases where seafarers have actually not been able to go back to work because they were so fatigued that after their watches, they've been on the social media or speaking to their families on WhatsApp, that they have not actually rested themselves. Similarly, we have complaints from seafarers coming in that because of the ease of communication today, the amount of communication that is going on board the ships is overwhelming. It is daily reporting, weekly reporting, monthly reporting, photographs before, after on a daily basis. We need to realize that the ship is controlled by the people on board the ship. And yes, a certain amount of reporting is required, but where to put a stop, what is excess, what is not excess. Also, I mean, there's been a major transformation in maritime training. We are seeing more and more cloud simulator-based training taking place, but we need to understand the attention span when a person is watching a screen, and how long can he actually go through that cloud simulator a day. It cannot be the traditional, 8 or 9 hours a day that a person is sitting and going through training on cloud simulators or even virtual training. It's an overkill expecting people, earlier who used to sit 8 hours in a classroom, okay, during coffee breaks, they used to interact, and even a physical interaction with an instructor face to face is not similar to what we call a virtual or a digital interaction per se is. So we need to understand screen fatigue coming in. So I mean, the overall picture is that yes, we need to embrace, we need to understand, we need to flow with digitalization, but we need to also understand the limitations where that is coming from. And we need to understand how we need to train our people. Firstly, I believe very strongly assure that how to embrace the digital culture and how to spread the digital culture within the organization, and the same then be transformed on board the ship and with our seafarers. So I will not waste any further time. I'm sorry, I'm being critical here, but I always see two faces of the coin. We have heard the positives of digitalization, but we also need to see what the limitations are and address those limitations. That's where I come from. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Captain Sankalp, for taking the bull by the horns, if I may say, that yes, development and growth and innovation is extremely important for us. But at the same time, discipline along with it will go a long way in making it more effective. Sure, point very well taken. We will come back to you, sir. May I now request Captain Tandon to say a few words or share his thoughts, please.
Can you hear me, guys? Because I've got a, I'm technology pedestrian, so it's saying unmute myself. Okay, if I click on that, can you hear me now, Shiv? Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Good evening. First of all, I'd like to thank Shaukat for bringing together a wide range of subject matter experts under this huge spectrum of possibilities and opportunities that can be covered within the seminar theme, Technology in Maritime. From the Stone Age, the human mind, clearly the most evolved life form, driven by the need for progressive evolution, has been using technology to improve their existence and survival. Allow me a moment of nostalgia. During the 70s, when migrating azimuth mirrors for position fixing and collision avoidance during a navigation watch to the radar was considered a game changer. Stories of masters using the radar as their personal navigation aid are not uncommon. And if the watchkeeping officer was permitted by the master to use the radar, he used to feel privileged. Then came the sat-nav. I personally have experienced and recall a master insisting that we still ought to use the sextant and take a celestial fix to reconfirm the ship's position spewed out by the sat-nav. Well, that was a reality that we've gone through. Coming back to the subject at hand, the point I'm trying to make here is that our industry was being forced out of their comfort zone and being asked to embrace newer technology, an unfamiliar terrain, something that humans generally shied away from. Technological progress, therefore, in our industry a few decades ago was significantly slow. With the advent of digital technology and digitalization of processes, however, the impact gained dramatic momentum. The industry continued to struggle to keep pace with the required skill sets to be imbibed within their workforce. Thankfully, the millennials have grown up in the age of internet and mobile phones and are becoming more adept to embracing that technology than their predecessors as it advances at a galloping pace. Yesterday, in her opening remark, Dr. Malini Shankar alluded to the smart and unmanned ships. What was perhaps perhaps scoffed upon by people of our vintage 20 years ago, is becoming more and more a seeming reality we will see in our own lifetimes. Other speakers also spoke about the benefits of technology brings to the industry. We heard Nakul just now talk about a great deal how the technology can be made to use for and work for us. Without doubt, technology helps in reducing accidents and downtime and improve operating efficiencies, helps in reducing our carbon footprint and minimize the adverse effect on the environment, etc., and overall helps in reducing operating costs for transportation of goods. All this was also stated by Gillian Carson-Jackson in her talk and further endorsed by Menti survey run after her talk, another use of technology that we see in our day-to-day lives. Back to the current day, the pandemic and the associated challenges forced the manning industry to look at digitalizations of not only the training and skilling processes, but also forced the hand of the industry at large to digitalize the recruitment and mobilization processes, something that was undreamed of 3 years ago. The industry responded remarkably well to people like the internet Gen Y and Gen Z people, and overnight we had processes on mobile phones and so on. And it came out a winner to successfully demonstrate the compliance with what is seemingly a highly regulated and auditable process. I mean, can you imagine what we were doing 2 years ago, before the pandemic? Somebody would come in, all his certificates would be ticked off, a checklist used to be completed, visually cited all the original certificates, etc., etc. And then the person was signed off, fit for mobilization and fit to be sent on board the ship. Pandemic did not permit us to do all this, so we had to adapt. And the recruiting industry, or the manning industry, which is the focus of the talk here today, responded beautifully and ensured that people continue to do that without any loss or risk to the overall mobilization. Currently, as things stand, seafarers no longer are required to visit the company office for a face-to-face interaction. But in the interest of time, I would allow more time for question and answer. I could go on and on, but in the interest of time, I would allow more time for the question and answer. And I would like to leave you all with a question. Nakul mentioned a very important point. People are the thread that holds everything together. Personal interaction is known to help build and improve teamwork. With the introduction of the faceless, or in some cases, video interaction and processes, how will this impact the perceived gap between ship and shore teams? All of ship operation comprises of people on board and people ashore. We have over the decades seen that there is a divide, this us and them syndrome. The seminars were introduced by companies where people used to have personal interaction. They used to interact with the superintendents while coming into the offices. With this digitalization of the process and doing away with the face-to-face, is there a risk that may adversely impact the vessel's operations? I'm going to leave you with that, although I must commend Sankalp for his comments that personal interaction is important and digitization is not the answer for everything. Thank you, Shiv. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Rajesh. Thank you very much, Rajesh. Yes, we must have some time for question and answers, which we will have. I now move over to Captain Bhasin for his comments and talk, please.
Thank you, Captain Halbe. First of all, I congratulate Shaukat and Naval Connect for the wonderful conference that he has been having since yesterday. Very good lineup of the speakers. Thank you, Shaukat. Now coming back, one of the good points when you speak at the fag end, that most of the things that you want to speak is already spoken. So thank you, Nakul, Sankalp, Captain Tandon, sir. Very good. I wanted to speak so many things about digitalization culture and that digitalized strategy. I'm a little bit taking a emergency exit from that, except digitalization culture is the key that we all have to understand. The Captain Tandon just not touched when we were doing navigation with the azimuth mirror. And those days, radar was actually considered a digitalization. People even talk when the ACDIS came up, sir, the people said this is artificial intelligence. And there was so much of reluctance to change. But now it is a reality. And it is giving dividends. If I may just take a little bit of escape from here, we were on a bulk carrier and suddenly the route is changed mid-sea. And you have no charts. What do? I'm sure Captain Halbe and Captain Tandon will remember. We used to get faxes and we used to put a shallow tape and all that. ACDIS has made our life so easy. That is digitalization. I'm now giving practical examples now. So that's why I'm going on this is my part 1, which is already spoken. I'm going on part 2. Okay. I will not only call digital culture, I will also call digital transformation trends. That we have to understand. Digital strategy is a part of digital culture. You have to first involve your whole company, your people. They are understanding that digital culture has to set in, whether he's working on the ship, whether he's working in the office. Because there's so much value in this. It takes time to change, but only with the change you see the value coming out of it. So that is about digital culture and digital strategy. Now, do you need digital strategy? Yes. If I want to do a voyage analysis, that is one digital strategy under digital culture. I want to do my fleet performance. That is another digital strategy under the digital culture. There are so many things like that. But to get that, what do you need? The most important part is the data. Nakul will agree with me because he was speaking a lot of technical aspect of the things. It's the data that you derived, which gives you back through artificial intelligence or through some other network, the solutions. That is how it works. So collecting of the data is very, very important aspect of any digitalization, whether in maritime or anywhere else. So that aspect we have to understand and make the people understand the value of giving the direct data. The correct data only will put you in a good aspect, because there are also drawback if the data is not correct. We have to really understand it and educate it to our staff, all, office as well as seafarers. I have actually a list given by Rajesh. Shukla should have called one more person here who I call Guru for my digitalization. He is Kaushik Seal. He was the speaker just before this session. And I know him for more than 20 years, and we interact a lot on the digitalization. And one slide he gave me, with this permission, I'm actually going to read out about that. That in shipping, in the digitalization in the world, 70% of the digitalization is actually happening in shipping. Whether it is in the form of management or in the commercial or anything. 70% is a huge thing. And almost all companies are driving towards the digitalization. They are going towards, and it's been going on for the past more than 5-6 years, that everybody is going towards it. And the value has come into the data. Most of you must be doing, I think Maneesh will be the right person to speak on that later on, when you get the fleet performance, to get your machinery data in your office. These are the key things for the future, and they assist your staff. In today's life, you get the data automatically, and through the artificial intelligence, you can give solution back to your ship staff. That is the beauty of the digitalization. So I'm just trying to put the things in more practical perspective over here. I also want to touch upon one more thing, which is known as cyber security and blockchain. It has really helped all of us a lot. These two things, blockchain, which is going on in our company, we are doing it for the certification, for various other things, and the cyber security. the digitization is actually helping us. So that's where I will end here now, because we have to give some time for the question answer there also. But I come back and tell you same, the people are the strength. People are the strength, and to make them understand both in the office and on the ship is the key for the success of any digitalization culture. Thank you.
Sir, Captain Bhasin, I just wanted to tell you, Kaushik Seal has just now sent a message that he's there on the platform. He's listening to you.
Oh, very great. Thank you. Thank you. Sir, he goes back 20 years from his Calcutta days.
Thank you. Thank you, Captain Bhasin. Thank you very much for your comments. We will, of course, come back to you. We have Mr. Maneesh Pradhan on the screen now for some comments. Over to you, Maneesh.
Thank you, Halbe sir. Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Very much.
Thank you. To start with, thanks, Shaukat. Thanks for having me amongst these very, very prolific and big speakers. I really don't fit in there because these guys are really big, especially the likes of Captain Tandon and Captain Bhasin. But okay, I'm sorry, my apologies for my not being very prepared, and I don't have a presentation as such. But I can just, just share some of my thoughts, which I've just jotted down now. Digitization in shipping, I think we are in Stone Age still. If you really look at where the world has reached in terms of getting digitized, we are way, way behind. Probably the reason is that being the cheapest form of transport, the obvious choice of investments was, it was not considered really important. But thankfully, the world is now waking up to it. People are now talking of unmanned ships, and there's a lot of technology being pumped into ships now, because they've actually realized that one of the biggest pluses that it brings to the table is to reduce accidents. And I think that's a big plus and for safeguarding the lives of our dear seafarers. I think this is really important. So in my opinion, it is work in progress. Without a doubt, I agree with all the speakers that is possibly the way forward, and we should all embrace it. I think most of us may be from that time and age when we had little or no digitalization on board our ships. We've actually seen the days when we waited for the ship to hit a port, and the agent would come in with not numbers but kilos of letters, which was distributed out, and everybody found joy in reading his own. And then we hit the time of the internet, and then we used to wonder when and how is it going to come to the ships. And then as it came in, yes, it only got better and better. So I think we all agree that it is for the good of us. Now, while everybody's spoken about technology in a different way, I would just like to put a little bit of a paint of marine HR on it. I'm just thinking futuristically that just like today, AI is used for a lot of data mining and predicting failures, especially, if you look at big car makers, they actually have huge data mining softwares which can actually predict the failure of parts. My wish list is that one day we can have so much of data about the training of a person or the performance of a person, and what kind of jobs he has done. So say, I'm just talking futuristically. So if somebody's done a decarb of a Yanmar generator 5 times, and I can start parking it against his name that this guy has done 5 decarbs, it'll be better if I put him on a ship which has a Yanmar generator. And then I am improving my chance of getting the generators looked after better. So, this is some kind of a proficiency badge that I can start attaching to people. And I will I would love to see somebody coming up with a concept of predicting the performance levels of a human being. Trust me, while some of us might be laughing now, but it's not really far when we reach this stage. You won't believe, I have a friend who does software for NBA. They can actually predict the shooting rates of each and every member of the team, of what is the probability of the guy getting the ball inside the basket. So this is not really very far. We are coming closer to those days where we will all be mapped and our performance will be predictable. So I think let's look at it favorably. Before I end, I would just like to kind of give out some of the positives that I have seen. And this is again more with the perspective of marine HR, is that yes, there is a certain bit of predictability that digitization has brought in. You know, we are like in Anglo Eastern, we have something called a talent matrix where we grade each and every person basis his performance, and not just his performance at work, and not just the perception by means of appraisals, but also by means of the performance of the ship in vettings and PSC and stuff like that. So there is, of course, a huge scope there. Digitization has helped in reducing the human overload. A lot of the reporting and a lot of the analyzing has moved to computers. Trainings, briefings, all these things which were, you know, which meant a lot of traveling and moving to, you know, taking flights and moving to Mumbai or Hong Kong or Singapore is a thing of the past. So we're not just saving on costs, we're also building a cleaner planet by having lesser carbon footprint by flying people all over the place. Yes, there is better monitoring thanks to the wonderful softwares available. And above all, I think the future, if we talk of the future, and somebody just mentioned it, that Gen Next or Gen Z or Gen Alpha, whichever one you want to peg it on, they're definitely more adept at handling, you know, a digital future. These guys feel very at home handling the different higher levels of software, and they actually can bring more value onto the table compared to the previous generation. Everything that's positive comes with a little bit of a negative. So some negatives that I see are, one is, of course, I think Sankalp mentioned it, there is an overkill. Yes, people are trying to overdo it. There is a gray area when it comes to using simulators. And primarily because we still, in India, we're still getting used to better bandwidths in tier 2, tier 3 cities, or even, I mean, why just tier 2? Even in Mumbai, I mean, not everybody has the highest speed of bandwidth available. So that is, you know, by the time it gets more standardized, I think we'll see better days. I mean, if I may just compare, when was the last time you went to an ATM? Today, all of us are used to Amazon Pay and whatever, so many modes of GPay and everything other than cash. And if I had told this to my father a few years ago, he wouldn't believe that a day like this would come. So yes, there are negatives, but look at the overall picture. On a lighter note, since you're not going to the ATMs, you probably don't have to worry about demonetization. So next time if somebody says Mitro, you don't really have to get out of your chair. You're fine with it. All right. Then of course, the other drawback is, you know, there is a certain feel which you get out of doing it practically. Say an electronics lab or a hydraulic lab, that's now more based on visuals. It is scary to note that maybe the doctors of the future are being trained this way during the pandemic. But then that's, again, if you have to take it on a stride, I'm sure there are some really good ways by which this is being achieved. But yes, we should be mindful about it. Yes, it is going to possibly eat our jobs away, maybe in the physical front, but then you will need human beings to make the softwares and do the monitoring ashore. So it'll just that maybe the skill sets required would change. And of course, we're looking at big cases of cyber crime. So we need to be really watchful on that. So thanks for listening in. And that's my little input about digitization. We're looking forward to the questions, if any. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Maneesh. Thank you very much for your thoughts. Yes, when you hear 5 people in position speak on this subject, there are bound to be some questions. And I will direct the first question to Nakul. Nakul, in your talk, you mentioned that it's the technology which will drive the regulation in future, or it is already driving it. Yes, to some extent we can see that. But sometimes I think on board, we are seeing it the other way around. I mean, a lot of technological changes have taken place because of regulation and not because we really wanted to do it. And it is very unfortunate that we build multi-million-dollar assets and then we gripe around for $2 worth of something, you know, which is so very unfortunate. To name some, GMDSS. it's a technological regulation that came about, which required ships to be equipped with certain type of equipment. And the GMDSS is actually for enhancing response to distress. So it's a very valuable thing. If you will know that in the shipping world, the SOLAS mandates a shipmaster to proceed to person in distress at sea, and he has to record. If he doesn't proceed, he has to record why he didn't proceed. It's a mandatory requirement. What did we do? Once the GMDSS regulations came in, we then put people through the GMDSS course, and lo and behold, we had a GMDSS certified officer. So there was a cause, there was an effect, and there was an action. Same thing happened with EGDIS. Despite all of that, it hasn't happened with communication. There is still no law requiring ships to be equipped with satellite communication. But yet all ships have it because business needs it. Without this, you're doomed on the business front. So how would you like to comment on, how can we prepare the seafarers better to embrace this transformation? We must bear in mind that we have the digital youngster, Gen X, Gen Y, who is now going out to sea or has just gone out to sea. And we have people of the vintage of Rajesh and myself who are still hale and hearty and are sailing happily. And in demand as well by the managers and owners because of their wealth of experience. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I think that's a great question. I think there's several parts, and I don't want to eat up all the time, so I'll try to be kind of brief about it. The first question is in terms of regulation triggering innovation versus innovation triggering regulation. Let's go back in time. You gave some really good examples, but let's go further back. One of the reasons the maritime industry, generally speaking, is painted as a reactive industry is because SOLAS actually is a consequence of the Titanic. There simply wasn't enough life-saving capacity, lifeboat, life raft, etc. Open 90 was a consequence of Exxon Valdez. And every time you have a major incident, the industry responds with regulation to fast track and force the implementation and standardization of something. The reason I say that we are now entering this cusp, this advent of innovation triggering regulation, because, well, to start off with, there will still be a continued period, and probably for a long time, that where incident response-based regulation will trigger a response, but not necessarily an innovation. So I'm segregating that, right? So it's something that needs to come on the ship, but it's really a response to an incident which has resulted in a regulation. I speak at a lot of these sessions, and actually I did one recently with some port authority and regulators. And one of the things that we talked a lot about was regulatory sandboxing. So let me give you some specific examples. The advent of 3D printed parts. No engineer on board asks whether the part is machined or forged or cast, but as soon as a 3D printed part comes on board, they're super nervous because they don't know whether class will accept it or not for a group of parts, right? But ultimately, it's a manufacturing process, which, because of its decentralized manufacture, it is going to come in. It's coming in a lot more, and we participate. The second one is drone deliveries. Now, drone deliveries is not only requiring maritime regulation, but also civil aviation regulation, port authorities, and a lot of different regulators to come together. And we're seeing leading port nations moving forward in that space. So what we're going to see initially is we're going to see a split in deep efficiencies and optimizations driven by innovation, working with port regulators to sandbox so that these innovations come out prior to the regulation, and the regulation will respond. And I can give you many more. Autonomous vessels is another example. You're seeing coastal autonomy, but not international autonomy, simply because there isn't enough regulation to be able to, insurance is a big problem. And like this, you'll have a split, and then increasingly, we will see that speed of innovation going forward. I don't think that we will get away from incident-based regulation, but I don't necessarily categorize that as being the biggest area of innovation going forward, Captain.
Thank you, Nakul. I know the question would have warranted another panel discussions in its own right. Yes, but I was just too tempted to ask that. I have a question for Rajesh, since he asked the question himself. So since you started the ball rolling, Rajesh, you might as well complete let it go wicket to wicket.
I realized that you're going to come up with your googly like that, knowing you for so many years. But thanks. On a more on a very serious this thing, I think technology. I think we all agree technology is here to stay, and technology is giving us a lot of benefit as we go along. It is inevitable. The point I was trying to achieve with that question was, a lot of people are replacing the personal interaction by technology, and my question was, is that a good thing? We know that man is a social animal. You work better with people who you work with, who you are familiar with, who you get to know better after you've had personal interactions. By just being a number on a database and having to go on board the ship and work with somebody closely as part of a composite shipshore team definitely is going to have its drawbacks and challenges. So therefore, my point that I was trying to make is that technology is not a replacement for face-to-face interaction, but a complement and a supplement to that to build the teamwork, to build a sense of loyalty, and in the contractual employment in a scenario that we live, a sense of belonging between the employee and the company that employs him. Because if that is not there, and the sense of belonging is not there, my worry is that the kind of output that you can get from an individual towards the collective effort of the team will be under question and a challenge. I hope that answers the question that I put.
Yes, indeed. It has to be a right blend of the human touch and the digital touch or acceptance, as you say. Yes, indeed, it has to be a right one. On a lighter note, I must share with you something that happened with me within the last week or so. My 90-year-old mother gave a call on my hand phone, and she got a message from a lady, said, "Ye number maujud nahi hai. This number does not exist." So when I went home, she said, "What's wrong? What's it? Why is a lady answering your phone in the office?" I said, "But there isn't a lady in the office. Why would she answer?" She says, "I called up your number and I was told that you are not there." I said, No, wait a minute, hang on. I know what has happened. So I had to then explain to her about this auto response that the telephone company gives, which is very hard for her to understand. That why would anybody give an auto response when you call a hand phone? But yes, these challenges will happen more and more, and the human angle cannot be forgotten. May I take the next question to Captain Sankalp? You touched on digital fatigue. Now, that's a monstrous problem that we hear from the ships, that the regulations are clear on rest hours, and we all know those regulations. But fatigue is something beyond rest hours. And how do you tackle that? Or how do you think we can approach that?
Well, there's been a lot of discussion regarding this, which some people may agree. I tend to disagree that, limit the internet time per person on board the ship. That was one outlook that a certain organization had. I think the only way going ahead is what we say, self-discipline, and trying to make the people understand what are the consequences of digital fatigue. I need to start it with myself, because it happens now. Ever since COVID started, get up in the morning, you start seeing an email, you start replying to that email, you go and see the next email, and then you start replying to that email. So it has to come through self-discipline. I don't think it'll be the right thing forward to limit the use of internet to individuals on board the ship. That is not the right way forward. The only way is to get people to self-discipline themselves, understand what is at stake, and what are the subsequent consequences of something going wrong.
Yes, this is a big challenge, and it's a big challenge because when you try to regulate this particular area, it is perceived as invading the rights, and it is a challenge. And I, unfortunately, at least I don't know of a very clear, simple answer. Uh, Let me ask Shaukat, do you have any questions from the audience that we need to take up?
Oh, I was just about to interrupt you and tell you there are lots of questions. So have you finished with the onboard questions? So then I can come out with the.
No,
We've got lots
we
of
can ask
questions.
one or two, then I can go back to.
Yeah. I basically have the questions mostly from the seafarers here. So
Sure,
yeah,
please, let's go.
and some of them are very interesting. So I'm at present not filtering the questions because they are coming in, and yeah. So Anirban has written, one aspect is that still in our country there are many remote areas from where seafarers comes, which has still do not have access to internet services in that region. In that case, how does a seafarer be able to keep himself updated with the latest digital culture?
Who would like to take that? Captain Bhasin, you have a large number of seafarers who come from all parts of India, and I'm sure some of them must be in a similar situation as Anirban has stated. Would you like to take that? I think it is more of an advice.
The question from seafarers are the most important one, and I must agree with him what he is saying. It is a running battle. In the remote area, there is an internet connectivity issue. There is no doubt. Forget the remote area. In the metro cities, sometimes you get into internet issues. You have seen what happened just last week with the huge rain all over Ratnagiri and all that. Everything, so many people who are staying nearby that area, they had no electricity, no internet. So this is a running issue. Now coming back, I think what he is trying to ask is not only to be updated, what frequent questions that we get to ask when our people has to say that I have to do my 3-tier course for the STCW, and the one which has to be completed, supposed to be completed in maybe 2-3 days, it takes weeks. It will get cut off, the connection will go off, the moment it changes, the DG camera gets the picture. So I'm just trying to say this is a running issue. Answering to him that how will he get updated, basically every company has to get into this and update him with the latest regulations. That's all I can say, whether by emails and all that. But the problem that we are facing running is because of the people to do the course. That is basically, we are actually a problem. Captain Tandon just raised the finger. I think he also want to add something in this.
Yes, Shiv, with your permission, you will recall that during our FOSMA MASSA interactions, not so long ago, we were talking about this challenge that people were facing to do their upgradation. And I think we came up with advice that we could pass on to our seafarers. Well, we know it's a challenge there. The people who want to upgrade or revalidate or refresh their certification need to then come to a location which is close to their home, which provides this kind of bandwidth to be able to complete. I think you were the best person to elaborate on that if you could. Thank you.
We did discuss this issue, that the location or the area of your residence, if you just do not have sufficient bandwidth, it's tough, but you have to go to an area where there is sufficient bandwidth, because there is no way we are in a position to create any bandwidth for anybody. And the telephone companies or the service providers will go to your location when they find a business need to be there. Otherwise, it is a tough call, and it is a real issue, admittedly. But we don't really have any other suggestion than what we just spoke about.
Can we go to the next question?
Yes, please.
We have lots coming in. Yeah, so there is a Captain D'Souza has written, seafarers are blamed for 75% of accidents, saying that they are human errors. Rarely it is acknowledged that the seafarer on the ship still fill paper logbooks, still complete Excel reports. Software on ships are designed for dinosaurs. What are your firms doing to transform seafarers' lives?
That's a great question, and if could I maybe start off with
Sure.
that, and then I'll
Please.
I of course look forward to all of the panelists being able to respond to that. I think the reality is that we are undergoing a situation where the user experience and the user interfaces for a lot of the software that is on board the ships come from an era where UX UI was not prioritized. And because it is driven very much by regulation, there isn't this really strong emphasis on wanting to have a smooth, easy experience, similar to a lot of the software that is available in the B2C space, because the whole genesis is different. I think the reality is that is changing quite dramatically. I think if you take a look at some of the new elements that are coming in, simple example, OCIMF Meg 4 requires a line management plan. Some companies respond by using an Excel spreadsheet, and some companies respond by using actually a piece of software as a service because they recognize the data that is collected can be reused for something else. By its very definition, that experience is very different. So what I'm going to say over here, and I'm going to throw a little bit the gauntlet out, is the reality is that our industry is a pyramid. There are going to be 10% of the companies out there that are the early adopters, that are really the visionaries and that are going to move forward with this. There's going to be the bottom 25%, which the reality is they're not going to move forward with this. And that's just something we need to recognize. And then there's the middle 65%, which are essentially waiting to see what are the solutions of the future. And I think that at least several companies that we interact with, definitely we see leaders and early adopters trying to make this better. And I see a lot of the technology providers working to make this better, but just trying to cover 60,000 ships is going to take time. And the reality is that not all 60,000 will make this change. That's just the reality.
Yeah, true, Nakul. There is also another angle to this, is that when we talk about what the captain mentioned, is so true. But if you look at it from another side, it's the youngsters, because they are used to the technology ashore. When they go on board, they find it's outdated, and as you rightly pointed out, from the Jurassic age. But the people who actually came from the Jurassic age and are still sailing, they find that it's high tech because they don't need to use the technology. Sure, I mean, somebody just mentioned on the panel about movement, transfer of money, and I think Maneesh mentioned about whoever visited an ATM, and I was actually ready to duck under the table because I went to an ATM this morning, and I mean, I have no problems going to an ATM because for me that is also an advancement, from writing checks. But let's face it, when I wrote checks, I never ever had a problem with money going astray. With ATM, it has happened. So there are certain risks that do happen with technology, which were not there when the technology was not in use. Yeah, it's quite common for us to use automatic cars now. A lot of people use automatic cars. But when we were using the stick shift, gear shift cars, we had lesser problems in the sense that when the automatic fails, it doesn't fail, it's very good. But when it fails, there is nowhere to go. You just have to park the car on the side if you can and hope for the best and get aid. While with the gear shift, it was we could manage something. Anyway, never mind. Thank you so much, Nakul. Does anybody else want to answer that question from Captain D'Souza?
I just wish to add one point in, which is that I think Anirban spoke about passing the blame and passing the buck onto the ship staff. My only comment to that is it's never human error is a thing of the past, and I don't quite agree with it. Yeah. It's always a process error. And I think that we as companies, we all need to realize that it's never advantageous to pass the blame or, park a blame onto the ship staff. It's more about doing an RCA, a root cause analysis, drill back, drill down and see which process can be improved to avoid the same failure. So please don't think that, it's ever a human error that is the reason for the failure.
I think Maneesh probably the human error part of it comes from a little different angle, not just the process. Because, at the end of it, in the event of an incident, there is a commercial loss, and somebody has to pay for that loss. And then the companies or the organizations look at insurance, and that's why the insurance is there actually to cover such losses. And the insurance need to apportion blame to recover the money. And maybe we have this perception that, oh, the ship has to be blamed or somebody has to be blamed for that. But that's the nature of the beast. It doesn't necessarily mean, and that does get published, unfortunately. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that person has caused the loss. As you rightly pointed out, it's the process that's important. And you need to rectify the process and iron out the process if there are any lacuna in that. Very true. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. Do you want to hear the next question?
Yes, please. We are last 5 minutes.
Yeah, last 5 minutes. I can extend to 5 minutes more exactly because this
Sure.
is an interesting session. Yeah,
Sure.
last session anyway of the event. This is from Dubai, Leroy Diaz Steelcore, and he says, how would you advise startups with respect to gaining an entry into the large ship owners to pilot and validate their digital offerings? Some ship owners have programs, most don't. So I suppose what I humbly ask is there a silver bullet for startups? So basically what I think basically what he wants to ask is, as my understanding is that maybe when we are talking about digital culture and the infusion of new technology, then there is a huge resistance of new startups coming in. So isn't that an irony, if I got Leroy's question right?
I thought, Shaukat, it could be the other way. The one that Nakul mentioned, that there are 25% of out of 60,000 ships, 25% are never going to embrace this culture. And how do you convert them? Maybe that is also a question.
Yeah.
Nakul, would you like to venture that one?
Yeah, I think I definitely. So my responsibilities within Williamson also include corporate venturing, and some of it is corporate startup interaction and work and sourcing and CVC and so on and so forth. I think the reality is that we are seeing more activity and more capital being allocated to maritime startups. That's a good thing. I think the triangle I described comes to the fray, and I think that all maritime startups need to select their target customer base with a lot of understanding on what is the pain point they're solving. So I see a lot of problems where the startups fall in love with their solution instead of falling in love with the problem, and they actually lack product market fit. And ultimately, with any startup trying to go to any big company, small company, or whatever, you've got to really answer to a pain point and have that value proposition. And therefore, I think that on the corporate side, a lot of work needs to be done to make sure that the lenses of either co-creation or consumption of technology is clear, who in the organization is doing it. The closer it is to operational teams, the better. And on the startup side, solve a pain point. I think that's absolutely critical, and make sure that that proposition is clear. And I haven't, and trying to recognize that there are going to be differences in the industry in terms of who embraces first.
Yes, you're so right. And this is the challenge I see also when the youngsters visit me, that they have produced something which is very innovative, but they haven't understood as to what use is it to me. That has to meet. And so at times I do find that they will come and they will look at some process and then tell me a problem which I haven't faced actually. So as you rightly pointed out, it's they love their own innovation, which isn't enough. You must be proud of your innovation for sure, but you need to address the pain point and the problem, and not only the innovation. Maneesh, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just wanted to make a point about the gentleman asking the question spoke about the silver bullet. So I was just trying to, I'm not very good at the IT myself. So the silver bullet that I see it, and again, from a very HR perspective, is what can you take away from the ship so that they can concentrate on the basics of running the ships well. Now, there's a lot of clerical jobs that the ships do. There are a lot of reports that have to be filed in before the ships come into port. If there is a way where you can have a kind of a central nucleus system or a central database where things can get automatically fed in, and data can be mined out from there and fished out as and when it is required, and we have somebody like a virtual secretary sitting ashore. Trust me, you'll hit a gold mine over there if you can make something like this, because that seems to be, and if I remember correctly, Anirban just spoke about it, that he's sitting and writing logbooks and filling Excel sheets and making reports, and he really doesn't have time to go and check whether the engine room flap is closing properly or not. And that's an area of concern for all of us, whether we're ashore or we're on the ship. So I think that's one hint I can give you if you can develop something on those lines.
Captain Halbe, we have another very interesting question. I think it's in the line of what Maneesh just now said. And if you want, I can put that question to you. It's again from a seafarer. I find this very interesting. He says, human error is a result of massive fatigue, and fatigue is a result of regulatory burden. So how can digital reduce the regulatory burden?
Who would like to take this question?
So if I may, I've got a certain input into this. The industry is changing. I mean, we are talking about manual logbooks. No, today the norm of the day is electronic logbooks. And how does it help in reducing the regulatory burden? Well, you've got the oil record book, which is on electronic platform, which has all your vessel details that are fed into it. It actually hints when maybe you're making a wrong entry. It doesn't allow you to make an entry. A prompt does come in. Similarly, there are electronic garbage record books that are coming into play. When we are talking about software, Maneesh was very right in saying, what burden can you take away from the ship? That is why it is important that today the softwares that the companies are dealing with are end-to-end software. That means crewing speaks to accounts, who purchase speaks to the plant maintenance system, so that this inventory management system actually takes place on the software. You don't have to keep going and coming forward with inventories. There are automatic trigger processes for spares and stores, because as your purchase speaks that your say X number of O-rings are left on board the ship, there's an auto trigger that raises a requisition and things like that. So I mean, this question, like what Shaukat did bring in, is complementary to the earlier question, that the softwares today that are coming out are end-to-end softwares. Each one speaks to each other. Today, a lot of companies, the master is not bothered about the portage bill because it's all automated. The systems are such that you just enter a sign-on date of a person on board the ship in whatever his the crewing software is, and the crewing software is speaking to the account software, and the wages are filled in the office when the seafarer employment agreements are generated, because they're generated from the system, and it auto calculates and it does things like that. So the whole point of having and these are not cheap software, they're expensive software, but for companies today, that is not an expense. It's more like an investment, because it's taking the burden away from the seafarer, from him doing his core duty, that is run the ship.
The mix between economics and practicality is the challenge. That is certainly a challenge. Any other question, Shaukat?
Yeah, I have lots, but then most of the questions have already either been answered, or maybe they are on the similar lines. So I just asked you the questions which are different from each other.
I have. Okay, let's make it the last question, and I will go to Nakul for the last question. Technology has pervaded almost every industry, and it is a part of evolution of progress. What makes shipping different?
That's a big question. Thank you very much for the last question. I think, 2 or 3 things. I think number one, shipping is the only industry, to my knowledge at least, that actually is governed by international regulations as opposed to sort of the national regulations. Even aviation is actually not governed in the same way vis-a-vis international regulation. I think shipping has a very, very complex stakeholder map. If you look at all of the different nations, and if you look at all of the different participants involved. So that's what makes it different. I think finally, I think what makes it different is for the reasons that I outlined in my presentation and exactly the difficulties that we discussed in our panel discussion, shipping also represents an opportunity that perhaps no other industry represents. Shipping represents an opportunity for technologists and other industries to come sit in a time machine and come back and take a look at what is possible. I think we talk about data, but the reality is it's data, information, knowledge, insight. There's a clear chain, and we have a lot to learn from other industries and a lot to embrace. I think shipping at its very heart is, resilient, wants to be transparent and visible, and it forms the backbone of international trade. And therefore, it is not an industry that'll disappear, but is an industry that needs to change. I'm going to leave one last comment, and that is that I recommend for everybody to take a look at something called Fogg's behavior model, because embracing a digital culture is about embracing a change in behavior. And what that behavior model states is that any change in behavior is a consequence of the motivation to change, the ability to change, and the trigger to change to happen simultaneously. I believe shipping is undergoing exactly that confluence now.
Thank you, Nakul. Thank you very much, and thank you, Captain Sankalp, Maneesh, Captain Bhasin, Captain Rajesh. Thank you very much for your inputs, and it has indeed been a pleasure interacting with you. I would like to hand over to Shaukat for the summing up and the last part of the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Captain Halbe. Thanks to you. I would like to again thank Captain Tandon, Captain Bhasin, Captain Halbe, you, sir, Maneesh, Pradhan, Sankalp, Shukla, and Nakul for being a partner to this panel discussion. We could not have found better people to be a partner in this panel discussion than what we have right now here. I take this opportunity also to thank everybody who's made the TIM 2021 conference a grand success over the last 2 days. My team tells me we've clocked 2,000 visitors over the last 2 days, and people have gone to the booths, interacted with the people, they've engaged on each and every session. And out of that, over 1,000 active seafarers and captains and chief engineers and students. And when I went back yesterday, they were bombarding me, of course, on a positive way, in the WhatsApp, in the phone calls. And we started the platform at 9:30, 10, but then people were there from 7:30. We had today in 7:30, we had 800 people on the platform. So that is a fillip that I get inspired with this kind of success, because it motivates me to work harder to get things like this across to the general multimedia of people. And getting you experts on board, getting your support, getting your blessings for our program has been truly a very honorable thing for me. I would like to thank our sponsors, because without whose help, setting up a huge event like this took 7 months to create, build, and getting across to all the people globally. And this would not have been possible without the support of our sponsors, mainly HSBC, Marina's account. Thank you, HSBC. Thanks to our supporting sponsors, Storm Geo, Vatsila, Bloom Energy, HIMT, ScanReach, Ocean Technology. We had Indian Chamber of International Business as our media partners, and of course, Nautical Institute as our supporters as well. I would like to spend the next 2 minutes, since we have stalwarts here, telling you about what we have in future. Like I said in my opening address, we are very proud to say Naval Connection Virtual Academy has trained over 2,000 sailors and seafarers over the last 14 months of the pandemic. We have now presently 25 courses, live courses, technical as well as non-technical, for deck and engine as well as general. And some of the courses, we have over 200 people participating in one batch, and we are really proud to be a skill development forum. Of course, we don't have any external funding now, so we are on our own. And maybe I will get back to Nakul, because Nakul is in startups, and but we are progressing with the support and the blessings of everybody else. And we plan, and then in the next 2 months, we are launching our own learning management system. And that, of course, we will go and I will present to each one of you on a separate note. We have taken the live workshops, and this is one of a kind in the industry. We have taken the live workshops and we have put them on the learning management system. And the system is such that anybody can take the courses from anywhere in the world, even from the ships. So this is something. The next thing that we have, and that I have, this is an idea I would want to dedicate to my wife, Aditi Mukherjee, who's a business professional for last 25 years. And she's worked with the Big Four also for many, many years. And she told me that it's high time that we had a dedicated maritime leaders survey to leverage the decision making in the industry. So in the next 15 days, I will ask you, and only CEOs and MDs and presidents and vice presidents and only the maritime leaders will take this survey. It's an annual survey which we'll create. We have already, I wanted to launch it in this program. Of course, it's not ready. It's just like last 10%. We are working on that. Objective is to find out the opinions of all the maritime leaders across the world and take out an enhanced report of what leverages that we have and what do the leaders think of how the future and how the future will acclimatize itself based on the decision making that. So it's going to be an enhanced report on which decisions will be made. So I will expect your support and blessings on that. I will send out the leaders survey to you. It will take about 10 minutes of your time. And I will just expect that all of you please take the survey, and we will populate, and then we will give it to an agency and who will populate the survey results and make a whole concise report, which we will share in one of our events. Third in line is we are planning, and I don't know, that is an uncertain thing to plan a physical event right now. The last year in the pandemic, 12 of our physical events got cancelled on the last day, some of them on the last day. We are planning a Power of Excellence dinner in Mumbai, as well as Singapore, Hong Kong, and Dubai. And this will start early next year from January. And the first one is in Dubai. I will come back to you with those invitations as well. And secondly, in January itself, we are coming out with, again, the Maritime Soccer League. So this is from the front of the Naval Connection Virtual Academy and the Naval Connection Group. And I will, with folded hands, thank you for your support and for your encouragement, for your trust, for the energy that you bring in and motivate me all the time. I'm very, very privileged and very, very honored that I have the blessings of some of the great stalwarts in the industry. And thank you. And if there is any last word from you, and before we close the event, close the day and close the event. So I will again hand over to Captain Halbe for any last word, and you can officially close the session, sir.
Well, nothing much, because I'm always worried about last words, lest they become the famous last words. So nothing more. We must look forward to a bright future. Yes, we have catapulted into a space which was hitherto a bit inconvenient or unknown to us, but I think we have survived. We have done reasonably well. And more power to digital. That's what I would say. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So anybody else wants to say? Otherwise, we can close the event, and thanking our worldwide speakers, worldwide guests and visitors who've been with us. And thousands of speakers as visitors and guests have watched us over the last 2 days in Facebook, in our handles, and in YouTube as well. And we've still got people in the network lounge. So in the next, the platform is open after we close the event. If you do have the link of the first door, this is of course the speaker's door. But if you can enter through the first door, it's a very exciting. You get on some of you already have, you get on a speedboat, and then you get on the team ship, and there is the mascot too. So if you can find time, then you can spend some time in the networking lounge and going through the booths. The people have created a lot of hard work in creating those booths. I will request each one of you to just go and spend some time there in the booths, and then we will have the session. In fact, we'll have the platform running for the whole day today, and till tomorrow we'll close it. So with this, I want to thank everybody who's been with us for the last 2 days, and also inviting you to participate in our next edition for the FSM 2021, which is happening on the 2nd and the 3rd of December. I'll come back to you with the invitations. The Future Skills Maritime is the flagship of the Naval Connection event. We started doing it from last year. The huge success has inspired us to make this an annual event in the calendar. With that, namaskar from the Naval Connection and TIM 2021 gallery, and from the Speakers Lounge. It's goodbye until we meet again. Good night and good morning and good evening from any parts of the world you're watching us. So
Thank you.
all the best.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to all the viewers. Thank you.